Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this is the Universal Law of Triunity by Frater G.N. Garrison. An article from Rosicrucian Digest, Volume 10, Number 12, January 1933. The Universal Law of Triunity by Frater G.N. Garrison. See, John, here's a notice in the paper of the death of Mrs. Spinkins, and now we're bound to hear of 2 more deaths of persons we know. What makes you say that, Hazel? Because it's an old saying, and a true one, that when anyone we know dies, there will always be 2 more we know die within a very short time. I have never known it to fail. People always die in 3s. Just wait and see. Hazel, of course, was referring to transition, and whether or not she was right concerning the triunity of transition is entirely outside the scope of this short article. Hazel did, however, in her own crude way, express a great truth of which she was little aware, that of the triunity of all physical manifestation. Perhaps if we consider a few common objects with which we are more or less familiar, without in any way attempting to classify them. In fact, if we take these objects at random, the wonderful truth of this principle will become evident even to a skeptic. Let us consider first, then, an ordinary book. A book, any book, consists of 3 essentials and from 3 essentials only. First and foremost, it must have pages, for the obvious reason that nobody ever heard of a book without pages. Such a creation does not and cannot exist. Next, it is necessary, in some manner, to bind these pages together. In fact, our ensemble would not be a book unless the pages which comprise it are bound together. And lastly, to complete this thing called a book, we need covers. The objection might here be raised that the covers may be entirely removed from a book, but that it would, nevertheless, still remain a book. True, but in that event, the first and last pages would then constitute the cover, since a book would have a very short life indeed without substantial protection. Covers are used for that purpose. A book, then, consists of pages, bindings, and covers, expressing the law of the triunity of manifestation. Such a lowly object as a common chair admirably fills this same universal law. For, as silly as it may seem, a chair must have legs on which to stand, whether it be 3, 4, or a dozen legs, and whether or not the legs have rockers attached to their bottoms does not affect the triunity of the chair. Paraphrasing, Ellis Parker Butler, legs is legs. Then, too, we wouldn't give much for a chair without a seat, and a chair without a back is simply unthinkable. In fact, a number of legs and a seat without a back is not a chair at all, but a stool. So, in this case, in order to have a chair, we must, of necessity, have legs, a seat, and a back. Our law of 3, our triunity of manifestation, is again demonstrated. Even most religious doctrines obey this law of triunity. For instance, Catholic theology teaches that, in the hereafter, there is a heaven, a hell, and a purgatory, while most Christian theology, including the Catholic, believes in and pays homage to a Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And our beloved Rosicrucianism, although not a religion, does not escape this law of 3, for it may conveniently be divided into 3 grades or classes: the neophyte, the postulant, and the Illuminati. Human existence, whether on the physical or spiritual plane, likewise obeys the law of 3, in that it consists of birth, life, and transition. And, while on the physical plane, a perfect triunity is no better or more fully represented than in the human relations of male, female, and offspring. Your breakfast in the morning is followed by lunch or dinner at midday, and a dinner or supper at night. Again, the law of 3. The food you eat during the day goes into your body, but your body is only one of 3 general classifications of man's physical entity, the other 2 being his limbs and his head. Our calendar, too, obeys the law, for a year is divided into months, weeks, and days, while a day is divided into hours, minutes, and seconds. If, during your vacation you intend to travel. You could do so in one or more of only three ways. You could travel by land, by sea, or by air. You could travel in no other way. In front of your home there is, perhaps, a beautiful tree. That tree obeys the law of triunity, of manifestation, just as surely as does the book or the chair or any abstraction we have so far considered. For a tree consists of a trunk, branches, and leaves. It consists of other things too, such as roots, sap, bark, twigs, seeds, flowers, etc. But all of these supplementary additions, while vital to the proper evolution, maturity, and progeny of the tree, are, nevertheless, not as essential to the physical manifestation of the tree as are its trunk, its branches, and its leaves. Music, regardless of how or in what manner rendered, must manifest as sound, rhythm, and melody. An absence of any one of these three would mean that we would not have music. Musical instruments, on the other hand, fall into three classes, and into only three classes. They are percussion, wind, and string. Then, too, any conceivable color or shade of colors may be reproduced by the proper mixing of but three primary ingredients: red, yellow, and blue. If you wish to communicate with another, there are but three ways in which such communication is possible: by speech, by writing, and by signs. A magnet, whether permanent or electrode, in order to be a magnet must have a positive pole, a negative pole, and lines of force. While all matter that comes within the knowledge of the human senses has length, breadth, and thickness. And there are but three kinds of matter: solid, liquids, and gases. Vacuum tubes, as used in your radio, were not always the most perfect instrument they are now. At one time they consisted merely of a filament and a plate. Dr. Lee DeForest added a third element, or grid, and although probably unaware of the fact that, in doing so, he was but obeying the law of three. By that very process we are indebted to him for our vacuum tubes of today. Even the voltages used in the operation of vacuum tubes are divided into three classifications, namely A, B, and C. The above list could be extended almost indefinitely, but we believe that we have given a sufficient number of unrelated instances where the law of the triunity of manifestation decidedly applies to indicate that the great law applies to everything, every condition, and every manifestation throughout the universe. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.